Lesson 29, Androcles and the Lion. Long, long ago, there lived a kind, gentle and courteous man called Androcles. But he had a very cruel master. In those days, kings, nobles and other wealthy men used poor people as their slaves. Androcles was a slave. The slaves were forced to do work for their masters. They had to do what their masters told them. They had no freedom, no rights. Even when they were unhappy with their master, they could not leave him. They were bound by law to obey their master, however wicked he might be. Now, my dear children, we have a story about Androcles. Now, long, long ago, there lived a kind and gentle and courteous man whose name was Androcles. Now, what is the meaning of the word courteous? Courteous means polite and respectful. So, this Androcles was a very gentle man and he had a very cruel master. Cruel means not kind. And he was an unkind master. And in those days, kings, nobles and other wealthy men, that is rich people, used to have poor people as their slaves. Now, slaves are people who are kept as property by a wealthy man, by a rich man, and they are forced to obey them, to do work for them. So this Androcles was also a slave. Now, these slaves, as I told you, were forced to do work for their masters, and they had to do all that the master told them to do. They had no freedom. That means they cannot do anything by themselves. They had no rights also. Now, even when they were unhappy with their masters, that is, if they did not like the master also, they could not leave him. They were bound by law. That means they had to obey the master, no matter how wicked he might be. Wicked means evil, how bad he may be. The slave had to work for his master. Now, Androcles did not like his wicked master. His master starved his slaves and often whipped them. Androcles felt that even death was better than serving such a master. He kept looking out for a good opportunity. At the first chance he got, he escaped from the clutches of his cruel master. Now, Androcles was a very, very gentle person, but his master was wicked, and so he was always suffering under his master. Sometimes he was whipped. Whipped means beaten up. Now, there is a whip. Whip is something which is made out of a leather strip and it has a handle. So when a person gets beating with a whip, it is very difficult, and these slaves were usually treated very badly. Androcles also felt at times that death was better than to serve such a bad and cruel master. So he was always looking out for an opportunity. For what opportunity was he looking out? For a chance to escape from the clutches of the master, because his master was so bad. Androcles wanted to move away, run away from his master. The next paragraph. Now, although Androcles had thus run away, he was not a coward. He took shelter in a forest. He was not afraid of the wild beasts that roamed the forest. He did not mind that he had no roof over his head. He was happy that he was free as a bird to go wherever he wished. Now hear what happened. As soon as Androcles got a chance to run away from his cruel master, he ran away and took shelter into a forest. Now Androcles was not a coward. He was a brave man. And so, what did he do? He was not afraid of wild beasts, because in the forest we know there are wild animals. But Androcles was not scared, but he was very happy that he was a free bird and he could do whatever he wished. The next paragraph. One day, as he was wandering in the forest, he suddenly came face to face with a lion. His first reaction was to turn and flee, but then he saw that the lion had not moved on seeing him. It neither growled nor roared. In fact, it looked at him piteously as if it was in great pain. Now Androcles was in the forest, and he was wandering, he was moving about in the forest. Suddenly he came face to face with a lion. That means the lion was very close to him. Now, as soon as you see a lion, you will be scared and you want to run away. Similarly, Androcles also wanted to run away. His first reaction was, let me turn and run away. But when he saw the lion did not move on seeing him. Neither did the lion growl, nor did he roar. You know what is growling? Growling is an angry sound made by an animal. And roaring is the long cry of a lion. The lion roars. We have learnt this. So the lion was very quiet. And in fact, it looked very piteous. It was in a very pitiable state. And it was in great pain. The next paragraph. Androcles paused. Then he moved very cautiously towards the lion, step by step. The lion moaned and whimpered. Please help me, its eyes seemed to say. Now Androcles was not a coward. He was a brave and gentle man. Now what did he do? He saw that the lion was in pain, and so he slowly, that is carefully, cautiously, he took one step at a time and moved towards the lion. Now the lion was moaning. It had some pain in its body. It was suffering, and it whimpered. That means it made sound of fear and pain. And it seemed when Androcles looked at his eyes, he felt that the lion was saying, please help me. The next paragraph. When Androcles drew near, the lion lowered its head and began to lick its paw. Then Androcles saw that the lion's paw was wounded, sore and swollen. Now, when Androcles went near the lion lowered its head and began to lick its paw. Now you know what is a paw. The foot of the lion is called as a paw. It has got claws in it, and it started licking the paw. Now when Androcles saw the lion's paw, it was wounded and swollen. The next paragraph. On a closer look, Androcles noticed that a big thorn had pierced one of the lion's toes. So this is the cause of the lion's distress, thought Androcles. Now Androcles came to know what is the reason for the pain and suffering that the lion was going through. What happened to the lion? A big thorn had poked the lion's toe. And so this was the cause of the sadness and pain of the lion. The next paragraph. Summoning up all his courage, Androcles stretched his hand slowly towards the injured paw. He was afraid that the lion would attack him if he touched its swollen paw, but the lion seemed to understand his good intention. Now Androcles was a brave man, we know, but since it was a beast, it was a lion which could harm him, he mustered all his courage and he stretched out his hand towards the injured paw of the lion. Now the lion was afraid, but he was afraid that the lion would attack him. But slowly he touched his paw, and the lion seemed to understand that Androcles had good intentions of helping the lion. The next paragraph. Androcles took the paw in his left hand. Deftly he pulled out the thorn. Then, tearing a piece of his own clothing, the kind man bound up the lion's injured paw. To his surprise and wonder, the lion then licked his arm as if to show gratitude. Now here in this paragraph we see that Androcles slowly takes the paw of the lion in his left hand, and deftly means cleverly. In a skillful way, he slowly pulls out the thorn, and what happens? The lion is free of the thorn which pricked him. And then Androcles takes a piece of his own clothing and he ties it around the injured paw of the lion. Now, to his surprise and wonder, the lion licked his arms. Why did it do so? It was showing gratitude, that he was thankful to Androcles and his kind behavior. The next paragraph. Androcles remained with the lion till it could walk again. He would hunt in the forest and share his food with the helpless beast. Every day he would clean and dress the lion's wound. Soon the lion was able to move about. Many times it followed Androcles wherever he went. Now here we see Androcles being a kind and gentle man. He did not leave the lion there and move away, but he stayed with the lion till the lion could walk. And Androcles would go and collect food for the lion and himself, and every day he would take care of the lion by cleaning and dressing up the wound of the lion. Now soon the lion was able to walk, that is, it was able to move about, and many a times Androcles went somewhere and he found that the lion was following him. The next paragraph. In the meanwhile, Androcles' master had complained to the authorities that his slave Androcles had run away. Soldiers were sent in all directions to capture Androcles. They searched for him high and low but couldn't find him. At last, they came to the forest where Androcles lived. Now here we know that Androcles was a kind man. He took care of the lion. He took care of him till he could walk. He fed the beast, and they were living together in the forest. Now meanwhile, Androcles' master, he had complained to the authorities that his slave ran away, and the slave is not allowed to run away. Unless and until his master leaves him, he cannot leave his master. And so soldiers were sent in all directions to capture Androcles, but they could not find him. They searched him high and low, means they could not find him after a lot of efforts, and at last they came to the forest where Androcles lived. We move to the next paragraph. It so happened that Androcles had gone out alone that day while the lion rested near the cave. Both of them fell into the hands of the soldiers. The soldiers took them back to the city. They put Androcles in chains in a prison. The lion was caged. Now what happened? Now finally the soldiers found both of them, Androcles and the lion, and they took both of them, and the soldiers went to the city and they put Androcles in the prison and they caged the lion. The next paragraph. In those days, people who were found to be guilty of a serious crime were fed to wild beasts as punishment. Running away from one's master was a very serious crime at that time. Therefore, Androcles too was to be thrown to the wild beasts. Now here what happens? The lion is caged, Androcles is in prison, and in those days, a slave running away from his master was considered as a very, very serious crime. And therefore, what was the punishment for such a crime? They would be put to the beast to be eaten up. And the same thing was going to happen with Androcles also. Let's see what happens in the next paragraph. On the appointed day, the emperor arrived at the circus and took his place. The crowds cheered loudly. The trumpeters blew the trumpet, and Androcles was brought into the arena. His chains were unbound. He felt weak and dismayed. He was certain that this was the last day of his life. Now, on the appointed day, that was the selected day, on a particular day, the emperor arrived at the circus and he took his place. Now, there was a crowd over there who cheered very loudly, and the trumpeters were blowing the trumpet. And at that time, Androcles was brought into the arena. Arena is a ground where it is surrounded by seating arrangements where sports or any entertainment programs are held. So that place is called as an arena. Now this Androcles, his chains were unbound now, but he was feeling very weak and sad, dismayed, and he felt that today is the last day of my life. Now what happens? At the opposite end, a gate was raised and a ferocious lion was released into the arena. It had been kept hungry to make it more ferocious. Androcles was filled with fear, but he put up a brave front. Now what happened? Androcles was there at the arena, and at the opposite end, the gate was raised, and who comes out? A ferocious lion was released into the arena. And this lion was being kept hungry without food so that it becomes more ferocious, more dangerous. And so Androcles was very scared, but he did not show his fear. He showed as though he was a brave man. The next paragraph. The lion saw Androcles and rushed towards him, bounding and roaring, but suddenly it stopped in its tracks. Then it moved slowly forward. All its rage seemed to have melted. Androcles saw this too. Each friend recognized the other. Now here, the lion saw Androcles and it rushed towards him, bounding and roaring. But what happened? Suddenly it stopped in its tracks. Why? And then it started moving slowly. Because he had some doubt that he knows the person who is standing in front of him, and the rage, that is the anger, also melted, became less. Now when Androcles also saw this, both the lion and Androcles recognized each other. So the friends came to know each other. They recognized the other person. The next paragraph. To everyone's amazement, the lion bounded towards Androcles again. But when it reached him, it began to purr and rub its nose against him. Androcles hugged the lion. He wept with relief and joy. Now everybody was amazed. To everyone's amazement means to everyone's surprise. What happened? Instead of the lion pouncing on Androcles and tearing him apart and eating him, what happened is the lion made a sound. Purr is a sound which is made from the throat to show content, happiness, joy. And it started rubbing his nose against him. And Androcles also hugged the lion and wept. And both were joyful and they were in a relief. Now the next paragraph. The audience, including the emperor, watched this tender sight in great wonder. People began to cheer Androcles and asked for his release. The emperor asked Androcles to explain the lion's strange behavior. When he heard the whole story, the emperor was also moved by the gratitude and friendship between man and beast. He ordered that Androcles should be set free. He would no longer be a slave. Now the audience, including the emperor, they were watching what is happening, a different sight. A very different thing is happening, and so people began to cheer. And Androcles asked for his release. Okay, the people are cheering and saying, now this is something very different which happened. And they were cheering and asking that the person, that is Androcles, should be released. Now the emperor also was very surprised, and he asked him for an explanation for the strange behavior of the lion. Now when the emperor heard the whole story, he was also moved, and he was very, very touched by the gratitude, that is the friendship between the man and beast. And he also ordered that Androcles should be set free and he should no longer be a slave. The next paragraph. When the emperor asked Androcles what other reward he would like, Androcles replied that he did not want anything for himself, but he wanted the lion to be set free too. The two friends went back to the forest to live a free life. Now in this paragraph we see that when emperor is asking Androcles for a reward, he was not selfish, but he was a very nice and kind man asking for the release of his friend, and he said, I want the lion to be set free. Now both these friends go back to the forest and lead a happy life full of joy. Thank you.